Welcome to How to Be a Money Magpie, the podcast from MoneyMagpie.com. I'm the money expert Jasmine Birtles, founder of MoneyMagpie, and this podcast series takes a similar approach to money to the website. In other words, it puts money in its place. It gets it sorted quickly and with minimum fuss so that you can go and get on with your life. Today, though, we're doing a podcast with a bit of a difference. We're looking less at the money side of life and more of the life side of life. We're looking at the joy, and I do mean joy, of spending Christmas on your own. Now, that might sound odd, but I know a few people who deliberately and joyfully spend Christmas on their own. And in fact, I'm one of them. And I thought that this year, because a lot more people will be spending the season on their own, not necessarily because they want it, it'd be really helpful to talk about how to do Christmas on your own and why it can be a really lovely thing to do. And to help me explore all the wonderful aspects of spending Christmas on your own, I have not one, but two whole Clairs as guests today. I have CoachClair, that's Clair Henshawe, who is a life coach and who's been through the ringer herself. She's suffered all sorts of abuse as she was growing up, and she knows what it is to be at absolute rock bottom, only being saved from suicide by the love and support of the Samaritans. Now, Clair helps people who are in all sorts of situations with her no-nonsense and direct approach to life. Clair, it's wonderful to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. This is a topic absolutely that's so close to my heart.
Brilliant. Oh, and we also have Claire Anderson, who is a friend, neighbour and fellow church member of mine who lives in London and who's spent all her Christmases on her own since she started work. And she did it deliberately and purposely, not telling friends that that's what she was doing in case they tried to persuade her to join them. So, London, Claire, I could call you.
Yes.
Have you had that a lot then, other people not being able to understand why you would actually want to be alone at Christmas?
No, actually, it's just as you said, Jasmine. I generally don't tell many people I'm spending it alone because I don't want them to invite me to celebrate it with them. I just really relish that day to myself.
And are there any particular Christmases that have stood out to you then that you've had on your own?
Actually, the ones that stand out the most are the ones that are the most extreme. One in Hong Kong and spending the day at an amusement park because that's what was open that day. Working in Japan was actually a work day. So that also was interesting. So the ones that are atypical stand out the most. But generally what I like to do on my own is take Christmas walks and a couple of special treats that I have in store.
Great. And Coach Clair, I'm going to call you Coach Clair to differentiate you, of course. It's a funny thing, don't you think, that so many people, often very kindly with the best motives, they feel it's wrong that others are on their own at Christmas, particularly, when you think a lot of family Christmases are really awful. I mean, really awful. And yet they want other people to join them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, to be honest. In my coaching, I actually get a lot of people who are suffering in the sense that they, there's this Walt Disney family, isn't there? And the John Lewis Christmas adverts that give the impression that we should all be having this amazing time. And yet a lot of people, like you say, don't actually get on well with their families. But there's like a loyal obligation that they have to go. And, a lot of people suffer with anxiety because of that, the whole build up and seeing family members that sometimes they're only just seeing once a year. So I do help them with how to manage that, and a big part of that is not to get quite so emotionally involved. Less is more about the Christmas dinner table. Just breathe through the comments.
Do you find you get more calls around the Christmas time than you do at other times of the year?
Definitely. It's one of my peak periods. The whole loneliness and feeling alone at Christmas as well, is a massive problem for people. And it cuts across all tax brackets, all ages, from the young to the old. People just feel there's so much pressure. Add in social media and all the comparisons that are happening there and the increase in anxiety and stress because of that, it's a massive problem, which is why it's great that I think that we're talking about it so openly.
Yeah, absolutely. Claire Anderson, have you ever felt lonely when you've had Christmas on your own?
Nope, never. I've never felt lonely spending Christmas on my own. And with a few exceptions, I've been doing it for decades now. So, what stops me from feeling lonely? As a practicing Christian, I was taught that Christmas is about Christ Jesus, who is also referred to in the Old Testament as Emmanuel. And Emmanuel is Hebrew, that means God is with us. So, simply put, when you ponder that God good is with us, how can you feel alone?
Yeah.
We're surrounded by good. Or to quote another, Emmanuel, or God with us, is a divine influence ever present in human consciousness and repeating itself.
So when you say God with us, what do you mean in terms of a feel? It's a funny thing to say in front of, but it doesn't mean anything to a lot of people. Yeah, God. But what do you mean?
Right. I understand God could be a loaded word for some, and you don't have to believe in God to feel this inner peace and joy, because I feel joy is innate. So if God is an unpalatable term, you can try thinking of soul. And one way to access joy in a soulful way for me is through music. Although I cannot sing well, I still sing because that very act makes me joyful.
Yeah. Do you feel like Coach Claire? Does that resonate with you?
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Music has massively saved my life.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in the times that I've been on my own and obviously overcoming abuse. And unfortunately, because the abuse was at home, then,
yes.
you know, I'm estranged from my family, as is my daughter as well. So, you know, but I actually love Ralph Waldo Emerson's quote, you know, back in the 1800s. And he said, "Nothing can bring you peace but yourself." And I didn't understand it years ago.
No.
You know, I genuinely thought he was away with the fairies. But, you know, to be honest, once I learned to actually really enjoy being on my own, then in truth, that's when the suicidal thoughts just stopped. You know, because when you're alone and you're happy alone, that's very different to loneliness.
True.
Loneliness becomes a problem when there is all this pressure and your head starts to overthink. And I hear a lot of this in my coaching. Doesn't matter what somebody's background is or what their backstory is. If you haven't flooded the mind and have got a really good self-care plan, that's when you can have some problems, which unfortunately for me and certainly for other people that I've coached can actually lead to suicidal thoughts. So it is serious to grab it and have this really good self-care plan to stop it from escalating.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember it's a really good point that you say about, you know, the loneliness. You can be on your own, be perfectly happy. You can be in a crowd and be genuinely lonely. And I've had both of those experiences. And I remember years ago, I was interviewing a psychologist and I asked him what was the most common problem that he had to deal with. And he instantly replied, loneliness, and that the worst type is the loneliness when you're in a relationship. So do you find this as well, Coach Claire?
No, I have to say I'm going to disagree there because certainly at the time when university students, they're leaving home and going to uni, I get a big influx at that time of year for young people feeling really lonely. I then have single parents as well that I coach that feel really like lonely, and also the added pressure then that when you're a single parent, you know, trying to make your child's Christmas really happy when there's only a couple of you or three of you, you know, that's a lot of pressure. I would agree though with the psychologist is that, you know, you can be really lonely in a marriage. I mean, I'm now divorced and actually get on better with my ex-hubby now than we did when we were married, to be fair. So my point here is that through my experience in my coaching, in my Growth to Triumph, I haven't got a common kind of genre or age. It affects everybody.
So Claire Anderson, I'm guessing, you know, like anybody, you've felt lonely in the past, but you've kind of overcome it in many ways. I mean, it's something we're all working on, you know, it sort of comes and it goes, that sort of sense. But do you think that it's this sense you've got this sense of universal love that you're connected to, or something like that? Do you feel?
I think it's because I'm a practicing Christian. I can't separate the two. I cannot remember the last time I felt lonely. And I think it's because I think of that word alone as all one with that sense of love, that universal sense of love, not that human sense of love. And so, sorry, I can't help describe.
Yeah, I know, it's
having to
hard, isn't
overcome
it?
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I know what you mean, because I've certainly experienced loneliness many times in the past, but I can honestly say that, and it took work, a sort of continuous turning away from thinking about myself, and as you've said, Coach Claire, comparing, with other people and all that, and turning and being willing to just sort of expand my sense of what life is, and that there really is, that love really is here, actual love, even whether you're on your own or what, that it is actually here. I might not be able to see it, but it is here. And it reminds me, there's a quote from Sojourner Truth. There's, she'd been a slave back in the 19th, 20th century. She's a black slave in America. And she went through terrible times, but she became a preacher, and she said, "We swim in God like fishes in the sea." And I think that's a fantastic way to think of life.
I mean, I'm 47 now, and I only found God 2 years ago. Prior to that, absolutely no chance. I wasn't interested in God at all. And I think that in those situations, when almost like loneliness is forced on you, my experiences are the same as the people that I coach, in that you feel worse when you've got no choice. And it's weird because I've always had faith, but since I've had God in my life, then like God is just this massive bonus. So I can totally relate to what Claire's saying now. Whereas honestly, truthfully, I wouldn't have had a clue.
Coach Claire, you must have done this a lot in your life, to actually practice joy, practice good, practice light, etc.
Absolutely. Happiness or joy, it's a skill. None of us are born with it. If some of us are lucky enough to have a really, loving, caring family, then that's great. But, there's a lot of people like me that haven't. So you have to practice happiness and joy. And the way that I do it in my coaching is to develop a self-care plan. And literally they have that. So they will have their self-care plan that's personalized to them. I'm not immune to this still. And I do say this to people, and I go, right, okay, what do I want to do? Now that might be because it's triggered off, whether it be ex-family member's birthday or, a date that's reminded me. And out comes my self-care plan. So yeah, I would agree with Claire. At that point, you have to action it. You have to flood the mind with the things off your self-care plan. And that is crucial for your own well-being.
So what sort of things are in your self-care plan?
The number one thing is that I always say to everybody is, you have to be your own best friend. At the point that you're feeling, and it could go from just having a bit of a down day to, before you know, it's a down week or a down month and things have really gone bad. You have to flood the mind with the good stuff. You really do. And, because most people that I will speak to in my coaching are immediately, they're overthinking. And I describe their head as a bowl of spaghetti. I'm like, right, okay, your head's a bowl of spaghetti. By the end of this session, we're going to have 3 things in it, and they're going to be really good things. I also do say, and it's not that I'm the alcohol police, but, I know firsthand through experience that whatever is going on in your head, that bowl of spaghetti you're going to feel like you're feeding the 5,000 if you drink. So it's really important. I don't tell people what to do. At the end of the day, it's people's choices. A really key one, and I love doing this myself, I mean, I would do this once a week anyway for myself, is to have a date with yourself. And yes, there's not much open at the moment, but there is plenty of stuff online. There's plenty of shows, there's plenty of concerts, that people can access online. A lot of them are free. And it's about exploring. Instead of seeing that you being on your own as a negative, actually, it's a time that you can embrace and really explore, whatever age you are, what your new likes are. I pulled out a jigsaw puzzle at the start of lockdown. I've not done a jigsaw for about 10 years.
What a great idea. I love jigsaw puzzles. They're great.
What Claire has been saying, I agree with completely. And it echoes the golden rule, which many religions speak of: love your neighbor as yourself. But they sometimes forget you actually have to love yourself. If you love yourself little, you love others little too. So I love that. Have a date with yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Best dates I've had, to be honest.
At least there are no arguments about what you're going to watch. You know, you've got control of the wand, the TV wand. Yeah.
Exactly. If the cooking's bad, it's only myself to blame.
Exactly. Claire, Coach Claire, do you have any sort of tips for people on Christmas Day itself? What, you know, it's nice to have some actual solid things that you can do that will keep things going, even if every now and then you might dissolve into tears, but you know, some practical stuff to have the best day you can have.
Yeah, of course. And actually, you've hit the nail on the head there. I love that. When you said have some tears. Now, this is really important. I've got two really important points here. Number one is definitely get them tears out.
Yeah.
There is so much healing in tears. However, this is the beauty that I'm going to share, is you have to put your timer on. So, you know, if you're starting the morning, I don't know, let's say it's 7 a.m. in the morning, and you can feel those tears, immediately let them, release them, play a song that's going to trigger, get them tears out. It is the best form of healing, but you must put your timer on. And when you surrender to that and go, right, okay, I'm going to give myself an hour, I'm going to let it all out, I'm going to tell myself the world is horrendous, whatever it is you want to do. And then at 8 a.m. you go, right, that's it now. I'm actually going to invest in myself and have a lovely day, whatever that looks like for me. If I want to stay in my pajamas for the day, I'm going to. It all then becomes intentional. And that's the key to it. You know, you're doing something intentional for yourself. You're not staying in your pajamas because you've got that depressed kind of approach. It's because you have made a decision that actually doesn't matter what the rest of the world is doing. If you want to stay in your reindeer pajamas for the day, watching some Netflix, do it that if it's going to make you happy and bring you joy, you know.
Yes. Do you think it's a good idea to, if you like, have particular times for things, sort of say, right, at this time I'm going to have lunch, and I'm going to beforehand buy myself the favorite food, that kind of thing?
When I've had Christmases on my own way back in the day, the worst thing that I did is not actually, you know, I didn't have that love for myself. So I hadn't gone out and bought myself some food. I hadn't prepared. Yeah, actually, if you've got a family, you know, it's your responsibility to make that Christmas. So it does actually help you. You know, certainly me being a mum has helped in that way. But if you're on your own, it's, you know, M&S do a brilliant, just a roast dinner, if that's what you want. Or if you don't want that and you want your Thai curry, just go and buy something for yourself that is really gifting yourself and nurturing your soul. And that's really important. Also, after you've had your tears and your pity party, it's really good. I find it really helpful, and as do my clients, to actually write a list, just 5 things that you're really thankful for.
Yeah.
You know, there will always be something. Another really good tip, and there's enough time for people, is to go and volunteer. I'm a massive fan of volunteering. I've volunteered for years in all different charities and organisations, and there's plenty of help that's needed this time of year. And just getting out and mixing with like-minded people who want to help the community is so rewarding. So I would definitely say that as well.
Yeah, I've done that a few times. I mostly spent my Christmases with my mum, and then she passed on a few years ago. But even when she was around, every now and then, some years we would work with the Salvation Army, or we did the Hackney Christmas dinner, and we did Crisis, you know, and it is great. It's lovely, and it'd be great to be able to do that at other times of the year, you know, not just Christmas, frankly.
Yeah.
I would just also add, if people are thinking it's too much effort to research how or where to volunteer, that same sense can be accomplished right where you live. The mom that needs help with her children, if you can act as a babysitter, helping kids with their homework, just these little things that is taking the sense of self, removing it and placing it in a better mental framework, I think, in helping others, but it doesn't actually have to be a big deal, right? It can be a little deal and have the exact same impact for your own well-being.
And Claire Anderson, what would you say to people who'll be spending Christmas alone this year and might be feeling a bit nervous about it?
Right. Back to what makes Christmas special and joyful. I echo everything Claire has said and can say it works because I always do that food thing like, oh, I love living in a new country because I can try the new foods that come out just at Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
And so every year I look forward to a new surprise. So little things like that. But the most important thing is don't wait for Christmas Day to do anything. Remember what we talked about, that joy is rejoicing. It's an action verb. So you have to start practicing it right now, tomorrow, if you're listening to this tonight, and just go out for a walk in nature. Just actually be in the moment and look at the trees and the animals that you come across. You will find yourself smiling by the end of the walk. It's just changing that mental state. So if you practice these little moments of joy, then recognize them when they happen, right? And so you can nurture it. When you get to the 25th, it's not some loaded day, right? You actually know what to do. You've been doing it already.
That's a very good point. And Coach Claire, yes, do you find, I mean, we've been talking about Christmas Day, absolutely, but there's that funny time after Christmas and of course New Year as well. You know, sometimes it can drag on a little bit. So do you find that these things that you're telling people to do on Christmas Day, they're pretty good to do some of the other days as well?
Definitely. Throughout the whole of Christmas, it's almost like about 10 days.
Yes.
A lot of people break up sooner. The only great thing that is about this year is that, you know, because we're all online so much more now, it's almost become normal to be online. Find new things to do that you enjoy online. So there's comfort in that for people. You know, and I would say the best thing to do, similar to what Claire's saying, is to get into the practice now. And it's all about self-love. You know, that's not some hippie ooh-hoo, you know, kind of thing going on. It is really important. You know, when I didn't love myself and I didn't know how to love myself, that is when you just feel so powerless. And that, unfortunately, is what can lead to the suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, when you feel empowered and you've got your own self-care plan, then it's a really beautiful way to embrace Christmas and embrace the fact that you've got the remote control fully on your own. Because, you know, for some people who haven't got children, great, you've got no responsibility.
Yeah.
So, you know, get looking online and seeing the things that, you know, you get learning something new. This is a great opportunity over the Christmas and festive period to really do an assessment on yourself and go, you know, what age am I now? What do I love doing now? Just because I don't, you know, I love doing it 10 years ago, you know, you've expired that, you've grown out of that. And when you've got a really good list of things that make you happy, whether it be, you know, a candlelit bath or your jigsaws or learning how to play the piano or whatever else it may be, it's a really beautiful time to explore you.
Very good point.
I just want to echo again what Claire said, because inspiration means being in spirit. And we all know the difference of getting into the spirit of something means you experience it more deeply. And so when she talked about learning something, I can't tell you how I've used Christmases for that. So informal learning is so easy in today's world, from watching online documentaries, listening to history podcasts, visiting before historical museums and houses and walks. I've just loved doing that since living in the UK. And in fact, for 2 of my Christmases that I spent alone here in London, I joined the London Walks tours, which have events actually on Christmas Day.
Cool.
So one year I learned about Charles Dickens, walking through his favorite haunts. And another year was all about Samuel Pepys. There's so much to do if you just go looking for it and be in that spirit of wanting to practice joy.
I think that for people who, you know, haven't got Claire's confidence in terms of, you know, they might have social anxiety or just lacking in confidence, to actually go and join a walking tour is such a mammoth task for people. And I think it's really important to recognize that, celebrate your wins. Just because Claire does it with ease or I do it with ease now. When I first went out and went into a coffee shop on my own, honestly, I was sweating cobs. Oh my golly. I thought everyone was looking at me. I was so paranoid. But honestly, because I'd already kind of said in my head, I'm going to celebrate afterwards with the fact that I've done this. The fact that then when you've gone out and you've gone and, you've gone for a walk on your own, even though you can see lots of families around, looking all happy. The fact that you've done that, I think it's really important to remember to celebrate your wins.
Claire reminded me of something. When I lived in Japan, for the first month, I was an emergency English teacher going wherever the other teachers needed assistance. And so I didn't have roots. And people did stare at me when I ate alone. It just, can this foreigner use the chopsticks? It was really like messing with my head. And maybe that's actually where my confidence came from, because I had no choice, right? But I did not feel comfortable. That is true. And I was going to stick out regardless. But she's right to celebrate that you're doing it. The first time I bought a ticket to see a movie I really wanted to see by myself, it's not so unusual. You will actually see lots of other people in the movie theater by themselves too, right?
But it just takes something to do it for yourself for the first time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the London walks, by the way, is a great way of doing it, because there are other people like me there, you're not alone on the London Walks tour. You think, wow, a lot of people are celebrating this Christmas in an unusual way.
Yeah, it's funny. I think, the whole thing, it's kind of like I said at the beginning, that with spending Christmas on your own, it's considered such a sort of taboo that people who do, and I was just talking to somebody at the weekend who's done it for years. She's a retired lady, and she said quietly, yes, I spend Christmas on my own. People think I'm mad, so I don't tell them about it, But honestly, the things that you two Claires have come up with just now make me think, let me at it. Let me try all these different things. This is going to be really fun.
It is.
Now, if you're a regular listener to this podcast, you'll know that at this stage in the program, we usually get ideas and tips from some of our money magpies. But today it's a little bit different, because we've reached out to the comedian Lane Moore in New York for her ideas on being alone at Christmas. Like CoachClair, Lane grew up in such an abusive home that she ended up separating herself from her family and effectively bringing herself up. She's written a book called How to Be Alone Whether You Want to, and even if you don't. And our producer Jenny has been speaking to her about how she manages the holidays.
It can feel like you're the only one who's alone. This year, speaking for myself, on Thanksgiving, it seemed like everybody was going to be quarantined alone, but I saw a lot of people who it didn't seem like that on social media. So, I think that being able to shine a light on the fact that you're not the only person who's alone on this day is really important. In my book, How to Be Alone, I recommend staying off social media, because there's so much comparison. There's smaller ways if you wanted to even just reach out to other people who you think might be alone this year, or who are alone this year, and connect with them, because maybe the person listening to this right now is saying well, I'm, not going to be that alone, or it's not going to bother me that much, or whatever. That's a great opportunity to reach out to the people in your life who might not be as fortunate in that situation. So I think that, you can engage in larger community efforts. I'm sure there are a fair amount of mutual aid going on. I live in New York City, and I know there's a lot of mutual aid efforts going on right now. So maybe you can look up those things. I'm sure there's people who are in need of things on Christmas. Maybe there's some things that you can donate even from your own home, and kind of cleaning out your home. And I think that it's always a really positive thing when you feel like you don't have enough to realize what you have to give. And that could be, like helping another person when you maybe feel like you need help can be a beautiful form of connection. But I think that there's a lot of like community begins at home stuff. Like what would make you feel good? Is there someone you can be there for in some small way? It doesn't even have to be monetary. So many people need food and aid and assistance and all these things. And I've always found personally that connecting with, even if they're strangers, extending that kindness can make you realize like, oh, I'm not as alone as I think. I have the ability to make a difference, to make an impact. And there's also, there's a chapter in How to Be Alone as well, where I talk about spending the holidays alone, whether that's Christmas or your birthday or Valentine's Day or any of these things, with some very real tips and ways to kind of refocus the way that you view them, ways to make yourself feel more connected. And some years, honestly, ways to just get through it, because it's not always going to be this simple thing. And then I also talk about ways to feel connected to people, even if you're not able to safely, intimately connect with people. So the whole title is How to Be Alone If You Want to, and Even If You Don't. And the reason that I made that is because there's so many of us who are like, well, I want to be alone. I'm sick of being hurt. I don't want to get close to anyone. And there's people who are like, I don't want to be alone, but I am, or I feel like I am. The main thing I would want to tell people is that to do whatever you want to do. Like if this is a challenging day for you, I would just like to encourage people to do what you want to do. Eat what you want to eat, watch what you want to watch. Make it a day for yourself if you can. I think that's helped me immensely. I'm Lane Moore, and you can follow me at Hello Lane Moore on Instagram and Twitter.
That just sounds like basically so much of it's already been said. Coach Clair, I noticed particularly, she said keep off social media. She doesn't mention keeping off alcohol, but I do think, social media and alcohol are not helpful things to have around you at Christmas.
Definitely not. And I think it's really important to say that, this time of year, and actually, like she mentioned, like Valentine's Day, which is another one as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, it's really important to say that this time of year, this is not a time for doing nothing. It's a time for action. And that action is actually investing in yourself. That we're all growing. I'm still growing despite my 26 years experience. There's always something to learn. And we change. It's a great way to almost give yourself a bit of a MOT and service and go, what is it that I really love doing now? I think that if your head starts to get those treble bowls of spaghetti, then it's really important that you catch it before it gets any worse. And there are plenty of helplines open over Christmas, from the young, 19 to 25. There's the mix.org, there's the NSPCC for parents, single parents, or parents, Samaritans, as you know, which is very, very close to my heart. And then Age UK and the Silver Line. These are all open. I've actually, been a volunteer counsellor for Childline over Christmas as well. And it's a really busy time. It's a busy time over the Christmas period. But I think the key to it is recognizing yourself and having that self-awareness to go, actually, I'm starting to feel a bit powerless here. My bowl of spaghetti, I've suddenly got 5 bowls. You've got to really nip it in the bud then and get that help, and then go back to the self-care plan, which is, I keep going on about this self-care plan, but it is your 999 emergency that you can do yourself. And creating that now in time for this festive period is something that I'm doing a lot with my clients at the moment.
Fantastic. And Claire Anderson, I noticed that their Lane talks very much about reaching out and helping others, and that bringing back to you. I mean, you've said that as well, as had Coach Claire. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? Sort of just even a little bit of helping others, it kind of takes you out of yourself.
And it's all around you. You don't have to go searching if you want to be helpful. You will find many opportunities, even the simple things like holding a door for somebody with lots of packages. You will be amazed how these little moments are like adding pearls to a pearl necklace. They just make you feel warm. And that's the joy, that innate feeling of joy that's inside all of us, that we just have to be mindful of and nurture, and then we'll experience more of it. I liked what Claire is saying about the self-care plan, and loving yourself is so important. With my faith, I extend that to being able to lean on love, lean on spirit, lean on soul, lean on the infinite, the sustaining infinite.
You know, there are times, I mean, I know I've had it myself, when you just think, yeah, what ocean, what love, what, yeah, no, it's just, do you know how much darkness I feel around me, you know?
Right.
But even in those depths, and Coach Clair, I know you've been there, it's even there, that love is there, even though we can't see it, we can't feel it, we can't believe it's there. You know, just accepting, I've found, just accepting that it is there, even if I can't feel it, I think, okay, I'll accept it's there, later on I'll be able to feel it. That seems to be a place to start.
Yeah, it's faith, you know, it's faith. And that's not from a religious point of view. That's having faith in a brighter future. That's having faith in yourself. And, you know, something that I learned decades ago that is really important is, you know, your feelings will pass. However shite you feel, you know, that you are, the feelings do pass, and it's trusting that. And that's why putting the timer on is such a valid tool to have in your life toolbox, to go, right, okay, I don't want, you know, nobody wakes up on Christmas Day wanting to feel shite. I think it's really important to recognize that is a choice. You know,
it is a choice. I was going to say, I never feel helpless when I'm confronted with those feelings. Because sure, we all have that feeling of despair or discontent or whatever. But if I've learned that if I don't like how I'm feeling, I change my thinking. And that I do have control over, and I can do right now.
I would agree with that. I just think that, you know, and certainly from my own personal experiences, is intellectually we know that, but actually the feelings are very different. And sometimes during periods like over the festive period where it can feel really intense, it's actually the only time that I would say stop feeling. You know, flood the mind with the other good stuff off your self-care list. You know, get that mind flooded. This, and it is like a distraction, but it's a great distraction, because the alternative is you're going to end up in a really dark hole. And I've been there.
And I think we actually agree, Claire, right? Because that's exactly what I mean. Change your thinking. In your world, you've changed it to thinking about self-care, what you want to watch on telly or any of those things.
Well, that's your lot from us today. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is, of course, MoneyMagpie. You can follow me too on Twitter at Jasmine, and on Instagram at Jasmine Birtles. If you've got a story you'd like us to feature, or you have a burning question, head over to the message boards on MoneyMagpie.com and put it there. We'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. We're interested in any of your fab money tips too. So today's episode was presented by me, Jasmine Birtles. My guests were Clair Henshawe, that's Coach Clair, and Claire Anderson. The producer was Jenny Birtles, and the music was composed for MoneyMagpie by Thomas Hewitt Jones.